Virtual reality headsets have been in the news lately for a number of newsworthy reasons. None of them good, really. At this stage, everything that could stagnate the launch of VR actually happened in some way or another, from shipping problems to VR DRM. That's a tongue twister for you all. Regardless, let's try and catalogue these events and unscramble this VR crapstorm. This video got delayed multiple times, in part due to my inability to actually use VR on the account that VR headsets are very, very expensive, but I think that's a good enough reason for the delay. Alright, without further ado, let's do this. We start off in an already tough situation, specifically the amount of shipping delays that the virtual reality headsets both Oculus and HTC, or technically Facebook and Valve, had. The VR headset had been backlogged and pre-ordered well in advance, because you didn't see that coming now, did you? The virtual reality headsets provided by Oculus and Valve are, and were, so overwhelmingly popular that demand outweighed supply. Thankfully, for the most part, this has been changed, and now the VR headsets in question are in demand, and you can actually get them within 3 to 4 days now, which isn't too bad actually, both of which Oculus and HTC have clarified. After all that malarkey, people who had the Oculus Rift headset had put in a weird situation where people could only play certain games on certain headsets. This was thanks to Oculus's controversial decision to use headset DRM, which is exactly what it says on the tin, really. The short story is that, initially, the people with the HTC Vive couldn't play Oculus's games, specifically the ones on the Oculus Store. Well, the reason was, well, a little bit obvious, because those games were never made for the Vive, or so that's what Oculus would want you to believe at the time. A popular mod called Revive attempted to address this issue and was actually quite successful, until a week later when Oculus decided to, for some bizarre reason, sneakily add in the previously mentioned headset DRM patch into the mix and in one of their updates, which checked to see if the Oculus was plugged in. If it was, then the game would start. If not, well, it wouldn't. As simple as. Irrespective of which side you're chosen, HTC or Oculus, everyone agreed this was a very bad thing Oculus has done to their headset. The entire point of that DRM was to literally check if you had an Oculus Rift installed, and if you hadn't gone for Team Oculus Rift, you were locked out. The main developer of Revive, Libre VR, actually decided to break the DRM in order to make the Revive mod work again, which, depending on where you live, could either be illegal or bordering on the illegal side. I'm not going to give names of countries because it's too complicated to go into here, so let's just move on from that. A further 2.5 weeks later, and Oculus flabbergasted everybody with a bit of good news. They removed the DRM check. Good riddance. Nobody truly understood why they added it in the first place. A popular theory is Oculus might have realised that trying to get people to play on your headset and play those certain games through your own store with your certain headset wasn't really a good idea in the first place. Trying to lock people out or into a specific product this early into its lifespan would at the very least damage Oculus's reputation, and at worst we'd see the breakdown of virtual reality as we knew it. Annoyingly, it doesn't stop there. More unneeded controversy arose on the virtual reality scene, in which sources claimed that some developers were being paid by Oculus, can you see a theme yet, to make exclusives in exchange for a monetary bonus. Oculus came out and said that yes, exclusives were a thing, but no, they weren't truly exclusives. Developers were being offered money in the form of Oculus covering some developer costs if the game was published on the Oculus Rift first and then on the HTC Vive later. A stupid idea, of course, as it once again promotes locking your audience to a specific headset, but given the costs of making a VR game, I understand why certain devs did this and opted into this scheme, as it does make some short-term financial sense. Any green is welcome at the start of a product's lifespan, it seems. Still work to be done on virtual reality, of course, and it obviously isn't perfect. Personally, I've only been able to test the new version of the Oculus Rift, and there are a few problems I've had while playing it. For example, there's a lot of blurring on either side of the lenses, the VR headset feels quite heavy, and a few other annoyances, which I can't really explain without you yourself being on the virtual reality headset itself. Again, hard to explain. A side note, surprisingly enough, if you're familiar with Parallax 3D, i.e. the way the Nintendo 3DS does its 3D effect, then in my experience your eyes adjust to the VR's 3D effects quite quickly. But nevertheless, I'm getting off course a bit. The problems mentioned above are half the reasons as to why I'm not buying my own virtual reality headset. The other half is because this is huge and experimental, and I'm not personally into it at the moment. Even with Lucky's Tale, a game I loved so much while playing on my friend's Rift, I'm simply not willing to stump up £650 for that experience. If you have paid that much, then good on you for doing so. You'll make the world of VR a rich place, and you'll help development, I hope. It's just too damn expensive for everyone else at the moment. Another piece of bizarre news came from Nvidia, who released a series of mini-games called The Playhouse, as it were. What surprised everybody was not this, though this is quite a welcome set of games actually, but the fact that Nvidia was making the game totally open source. Yeah, a company known very well for not open sourcing their drivers or any of the technologies they've ever made or released was making an open source game. I applaud you, Nvidia, for once. Well done. That was an incredibly brief video on the recent news of VR, and it will likely be outdated very soon. And also I hope the events are a little bit easier to understand now that I've put this in this weird timeline, I suppose. And with that, I thank you very much for listening.